You know, the Bible refers to Satan as the father of lies. The father of lies. Many people think that he only deceives mankind. That's not true. He is the father of lies. How many of you know who else Satan deceived? Who else did he lie to? Think about this. When Eve was deceived by him, what did he do? Think about it. He told her that by eating the fruit from the tree of knowledge, not only would she not die, but she would be like God. Remember that? This is the game he plays. It never changes, really. He convinced Eve that if she disobeyed God's command and ate the fruit from the tree of knowledge, that she would become a god. Now, who else had those same desires? Who else was tricked into believing that giving in to those desires would result in becoming like God? Who else had their eyes on some forbidden fruit, and by the act of taking that forbidden fruit would result in them becoming like God? The Watchers. The Watchers were actually lied to. They were deceived. They were tricked by Satan into taking wives. Why? Because they desired women. Think about that. Satan knew their weakness, just like he knew Eve's weakness. And like Eve, he deceived the Watchers into believing that by taking of the forbidden fruit, which in that case were women, they too would become gods. Yes, of course, they were all well aware of the consequences, but so was Eve. So was Adam. But they did it anyway, didn't they? You would think that after witnessing what happened to Adam and Eve, that the Watchers would learn from their mistakes. But somehow, some way, the devil was able to deceive them as well, so that they would ultimately share the same fate as Adam and Eve: death. So mankind not only had to inherit the consequences of the actions taken by Adam and Eve, they also had to deal with consequences of the actions taken by the Watchers, resulting in them having to deal with the Nephilim. Not to mention the complete corruption and defilement of mankind and many of the other life forms on the planet. Now, there are several ancient texts that mention giants, and sometimes it's interesting to see what was written in ancient texts that come from different cultures around the world. One of the questions that tends to come up over and over again is, how in the world were the giants in the earth before the flood and after that? If the only survivors of the flood were aboard the ark, then how did the Nephilim survive to reappear once again? There are many theories, but the clues may be in what was written.
A Trump tax on gas, on food, on clothing, on over-the-counter medication. Donald Trump's plan would cost a typical family $3,900 a year.
Okay, so there are a few theories about how the giants may have survived the Great Flood. For this presentation, I actually want to cover a few possible explanations here, some of which you may have never heard of. I'm going to tell you right now that these stories are quite fantastic. And based on the biblical narrative most of us are familiar with, they may not make sense at first, or they may be hard to believe. But the Bible does give us clues, and there are several things in the Bible that are not explained. They're just not explained. But one of the things we have to admit is that they keep mentioning giants being on the earth well after the flood. So one of the explanations for how giants may have survived the flood is based on the details in the Talmud and Midrash. And keep in mind that these are opinions or interpretations. Remember, in Genesis 7, it reads, "And the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased, and bare up the ark, and it was lift up above the earth. And the waters prevailed, and were increased greatly upon the earth. And the ark went upon the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth. And all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. And all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl, and of cattle, and of beast, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man. All in whose nostrils was the breath of life, of all that was in the dry land died. And every living substance was destroyed, which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle, and the creeping things, and the fowl of the heaven, and they were destroyed from the earth. And Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark." Now, according to a few interpreters, the flood did not entirely reach the land of Israel. And they say this is supported by a verse in Ezekiel 22:24, which refers to Israel as a land not rained upon on the day of fury. This suggests that the devastation brought by the flood, including the torrential rain and rising waters, did not directly affect the region. There's something else that many of you may have never heard of. So get this. Although the rain may not have fallen on Israel, there is this idea that the inhabitants still perished due to the extreme heat of the waters, which spread globally. Commentators or certain rabbis say that while Israel might have been spared from the rainfall, the floodwaters from other regions eventually reached it, drowning its people. Now, even though we have these interpretations, the suggestion that some parts of Israel might have been less affected than others opens the possibility that certain antediluvian beings, including giants, could have survived there. The reason they think this is because in the scriptures it reads, "Of all that was in the dry land died," suggesting that only certain parts of the earth were dry land as opposed to wet land, and suggesting that Israel was not dry land. And yeah, if you want to play around with semantics, then one could make that argument. Another thing is that when Noah sent out the dove came back with a plucked olive branch or leaf, which would suggest that we have surviving vegetation somehow. Another explanation revolves around the giant Og, whose survival is detailed in Jewish tradition. Some say that according to the Talmud, Og was a descendant of the Nephilim, or Raphaim, or direct descendant of the fallen angels, and is referred to as a fugitive from the flood. In one account from the Midrash, Og rode on the outside of Noah's ark, striking a deal with Noah to be fed daily through a hole drilled in the ark's side in exchange for his pledge to be Noah's slave and his descendants, which sounds more like something out of Greek mythology than what we read in biblical scripture. The idea here is that Og either held onto the ark or stayed near it, protected from the burning waters that consumed the rest of the earth. Of course, if the flood waters were at a boiling point, then that means that the...
safe to say, Israel, that it was some type of, not only was it just water that killed the Nephilims and the people that was on the earth, people that was on the earth. Ain't nobody survived but Noah and his family. It was some type of chemical that was in that water coming from the ground and from the heavens when the sky cracked open. But Noah had been warning them for the longest to change, and they didn't want to. And they didn't want to. They didn't want to change. So the whole time Noah was there warning them that the flood was going to come and destroy them because they have never had water. It was always dry days. But when the Creator decided to bring the water on the earth after Noah and his family entered into the ark with all the animals the Creator wanted to save, the waters start to come from off the ground, and the skies cracked open, and the water came from above. Remember, so above, so below. There had to be chemicals, some type of chemical in that water, caused the earth to burn, some type of chemical to destroy everything that was not in that ark. Everything. And I'm quite sure it probably turned them into stone and has destroyed the animals. Because it was a lot of water that was on the earth. So it had to be some type of chemical mixed with that water to be able to, because the water alone can destroy you. Fill up in your lungs can destroy you. But the Creator wanted something other than just the water to destroy those Nephilims. Destroyed the body, but not the spirit. Destroyed the spirit from the fallen angels. Destroyed the body from the fallen angels, but not the spirit. The spirit continues to live on. Remember, because they cursed upon this earth. They can't never go back to heaven. So it had to have been some type of chemical along with that water to be able to destroy everything that was on the face of the earth, except for Noah and his family. So why would the Creator, who was going to destroy everything on the earth, save a Nephilim? No, I don't believe so. I believe the Creator destroyed everything except for Noah and his family. So I believe that it was some type of solution or chemical that the Creator put in that water when he unleashed it on the earth and destroyed everybody in it. I believe that's what happened. The Creator did not save anybody. When he said he was going to destroy everything from off the earth, that is what he did, except for Noah. Because if that's the case, then the Most High, the Creator, would have saved the Nephilims. They were just as corrupted as the fallen angels, because they were mixing DNA and doing all type of things that was not right. So the Creator warned them what was going to take place with Noah and the fallen angels. But they did not listen. So the Creator destroyed the earth with the flood and started another generation with Noah and his family. So he didn't save no Nephilim. He destroyed all of them. Don't you think the Creator know where all the Nephilim were? Just like he knew where all the fallen angels were. He destroyed them too. Now, I don't know what the Creator did with the spirit, but he definitely destroyed the bodies, because the flood with as much water that came on the face of the earth. As much water, Israel, came on the face of the earth, it destroyed everything and everybody. Didn't save nobody. Just Noah and his family. That's it.
Creatures of the sea probably wouldn't have survived either. Now, this is strange because to me, there is no reason for God to have allowed that to happen. It almost defeats the purpose of the flood, right? Og surviving the flood was not the only case. Some of the rabbi interpreters mention his brother Sihon, another giant, who could have lived through the flood. It suggests that, like Og, Sihon
and this Nephilim right here, all destroyed. Now, I don't know if the Creator destroyed sea life because they was not able to get into the ark. They had to stay in water. So I don't believe the Creator allowed the flood to destroy sea life because he wanted to continue to go on. But everything that was on land, yes, he destroyed. So for all that he wanted to be inside the ark with Noah, all the fallen angels, all the Nephilims and its seed drowned in that flood. And whatever was in that water caused everything to be destroyed. Because the Creator can save his sea life, everything, every animal or creature that's in the water, and just destroy what he wants to be destroyed.
May have possessed some form of divine favor or supernatural ability that allowed him to continue on living in the post-flood.
Why doesn't everyone between 45 and 65 claim the 250,000?
Sorry, Israel. They're in their commercials.
Now, the thing is, these two brothers, Og and Sihon, went on to establish and rule over nations of giants in the regions of the Transjordan. Biblical texts reference these giants in various battles where, despite their size, they were often defeated by smaller human armies. The Torah recounts that in the time of Abraham, several giants were wiped out, while later in Israel's history, the Israelites conquered the lands of both Og and Sihon. Some commentators suggest that the giants may have relied too much on their size and neglected the strategies and skills necessary for warfare. And this may explain why they were regularly defeated by much smaller human forces. The biblical giants that survived the flood eventually faced their death in later generations. Many were eradicated during the era of the patriarchs, and others were displaced or defeated by different tribes, including the Israelites. Now, there is another theory about how the giants could have survived the flood, and that is they hid underground, which is possible, but here is what you would need to achieve that. You would need a shelter on higher ground, such as a hill or mountain, which would be less vulnerable to rising water levels, even during an extreme flood. The terrain should facilitate water drainage away from the shelter. Clay soils or bedrock would help create a natural barrier. The walls, floor, and roof of the shelter would need to be made of materials that were impermeable to water, such as reinforced concrete.
So if the Nephilims wanted to hide in this so-called pyramid on the mountains, Israel, as tall and as big as the Nephilims were, would have to be very high and very big to hold them, because the Nephilims were very tall and huge. Two, if the Creator wanted the water to reach them, He can flood that mountain or pyramid.
Concrete with additional waterproofing layers like rubber or some type of membrane. You would need a series of drainage pipes and pumps that could help divert water away from the shelter. That must be designed to function even during extreme flooding using gravity-based drainage. Or, if they had the technology, battery-powered pumps or energy sources like solar panels or generators. And of course, most importantly, air intakes would need to be positioned well above the flood levels to prevent water from entering. They would have to be fitted with filters to protect against debris or contaminated air. In case the shelter's primary air supply is compromised, you would need a backup system powered by generators or manual mechanisms. I mean, we have the ability to compress air into storage tanks. But again, this would all depend on how technologically advanced they were at the time of the flood. Then you have the theory that perhaps someone aboard the ark may have carried the genetics of the Nephilim or Raphaim over into the post-flood world. Some say that would have something to do with Noah's son Ham, or perhaps one of the wives of Noah's sons. Whether through divine intervention, geographic protection, or sheer resilience, figures like Og and Sihon are a reminder of the complexity between human and supernatural forces in ancient texts. While the giants were eventually wiped out as far as we know, their survival through the flood presents a paradox in the narrative. And it suggests that the antediluvian world was far more mysterious and layered. Not to mention that so many details were left out in Scripture. And so, not everything is what it seems. Anyway, that's going to be all for now. And there is more to come. I do have a recommended video for the day. Watch that video. It will be linked on screen at the top right corner of this video and in the description box and pinned comment below. Please hit the thumbs up button to help with the YouTube algorithms. Check out my other links in the description box below. You can also find me on Instagram at jwoodward if you're interested in sending me any clips, reels, or
Much love,
information.
Israel.
Everyone have a